Hello and welcome to episode 1368 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, January 24th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon / morning by Justin Mason because we crossed two time zones. So that's why it's still morning out there, but it's afternoon here in Central Texas. How you doing, Justin?
I'm cold. It definitely feels like morning. It is like 45 degrees in my office right
Ooh,
now, which
yeah, it
isn't
is
as
cold.
bad as it could be, but it's I've been out here all morning. So like
We went through
it's
our
been
big
cold.
winter spell. We were in the
Yeah.
20s and 30s all week. We're at 56 now, so we'll see. There could be another one, but it's usually pretty good. How
Oh,
excited are
and
you for tomorrow, by the way?
I'm excited about that, but I'm more excited, and I gotta get the plug out early.
Mm-hmm.
TGFBI. TGFBI.
Yes, you have to
Sign
sign
up for
up.
TGFBI if you are any sort of content creator. And I say that very loosely, right? Like if you're just sending out a random tweet now and then, I don't really count that. But like there are people on TikTok now. There are people
Mm-hmm.
who are like, doing all sorts of cool different things with video. If you're writing articles, podcasts, just go sign up for TGFBI at tgfbi.com. And if you aren't a content creator and you want to try to win your way in for next year, go to tgfbi.com and sign up for a satellite league. I am
Perfect.
literally spending the day messaging people, and like that is my day today.
I think I said this earlier in the week. I can't believe it's late January already. It's great. It's great. We made it through the bulk of the awful part of the off season, um, and now people like football. As their teams get eliminated, they start to come back into baseball more, and by the time we hit the Super Bowl, everyone will be back in. So we're going to start our second base preview today. And a guy who used to play second base did have a big signing, but I'm going to save that for you and Jason to talk about Profar to the Braves because I imagine you're going to need some time to cry, and we're on a bit of a time crunch because that means the end of your boy Kelnick, at least as a starter, right?
I think it probably does. I haven't like really looked at it super closely yet because I was writing a bunch of articles last night. But I don't know. Right now, Ross Resource still has Kelnick in right. So
Well,
on a
that's
strong
only
side
for a
platoon.
month until Acuna comes back.
Oh, that's true. I didn't
That's
think
all
about
that
that.
is. Yeah, he'll
Yeah,
start the, sorry, I should have been more clear though.
yeah,
He'll
it's true.
start the season playing, yes, Kelnick will, but there's a time limit on that.
But that also insinuates Acuna comes back as quickly
Also
as
fair,
we hope
right?
he does,
And
and that
Harris
Michael
stays
Harris does. Yeah,
healthy. Yeah,
Michael Harris stays
absolutely,
healthy. Like
absolutely.
other guys could be hurt. Like it's. I'm not saying like you should be going out and drafting Kelnick because you probably shouldn't.
We'll wait
But
for the price to drop because after
yeah,
this,
he'll
you
be
know,
free.
you do your market reports, and I got
Mm-hmm.
to imagine it'll take a little time to show the effect, but in about 2 3 weeks when you do an outfield one, your
Yeah.
boy Kelnick could be on there as somebody who drops low enough that yeah you do want to buy. But again, you and Jason can dive into that more deeply on Sunday and kind of see where it breaks down with profile. We're going to dive right into second base, and we got to start with the king at the top. And I got to be honest, I thought that we were going to be done with him as a potential second baseman when he was out in right field. And then everything happened last year to bring Mookie Betts back onto the dirt. And he also has shortstop eligibility. In fact, he has that more locked in than second base. Because again, for those that are just joining us, if you didn't hear first and catcher, we do cast a wider net here. 5 game eligibility, and he did play 18 games. So if you have 10 or 15, then Mookie will qualify at second there. But he did fall short of the 20 that is more of the universal qualification rate. But 65 at short, 43 in right. So in some leagues, he's going to have second, short, and outfield. Let's talk about those leagues like Yahoo, where he'll have second base eligibility. Does that add to how interested you are in him? Like, do you draft him earlier? Like right now, he's 12th at the NFBC, where he's shortstop and outfield. If you are playing in a league where Mookie Betts is second base eligible, does that push him into the middle of the first round for you to the upper first round because second base is so sketchy?
So I'm
Assuming
gonna
you
say
agree that it's sketchy, by the way, you might not agree.
I'm gonna say something that I'm sure people are gonna get angry about. I don't know
Go
that
ahead.
Mookie Betts is a first rounder. Um,
Yeah, that's a terrible take.
yeah. So
How dare
we're
you?
coming off a season where he only played 116 games.
Mm-hmm.
He's now 32 years old. Uh, I mean, I love Mookie, and I
You're
think
talking about the
on a
5 WAR season he had in 116 games, right? Just making
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Okay,
like
just making sure. Just making sure.
if he's completely healthy coming into spring and through spring training, like I may change my tune on this, but like
Okay.
right now, like now where he's second base eligible really changes things, right? Because I think he is the number one second baseman.
I agree.
I don't think there is another second baseman you should be taking in the first round, maybe even the second round. So like
Hmm.
he's definitely a cut above. So if you are in a league where he's eligible at second base to start the season, I can make the argument that yeah, he's a first rounder. We'll talk more about this probably next step or not next episode, but next position preview, because I'm sure second base will take longer than just one episode.
Right.
But when we get to shortstop, like I have a lot of shortstops ahead of Mookie Betts that I don't think other people are going to have ahead of him. So, or not a lot, at least a few. I worry about the age. I worry about how much they're going to push him. I don't love that they keep moving in positions. Like
He's
like
back
I
to the
know
outfield now, right? Or back to second
no,
base. Back to second
no,
base.
yeah, I think now with Lux gone, he's going to be their shortstop.
Wait, he's back to
And
shorts. Okay, sorry, I'm confused. Then I'm confusing other
yeah,
folks too. My fault. My fault.
so I would have preferred him at second base because then he would pick up that second base eligibility in leagues where he doesn't already have it.
Right.
Um, but it looks like he's going to be the shortstop, and
Yeah.
Hyseon Kim will be the second baseman. Now that could change. Like, we saw it last year. Like he moved around, right? So, I am a little worried about the health and just kind of his age. Now, I still think on a per plate appearance basis, yeah, he's a first round talent, and if he finishes a first round player, I have no problem with that. But I think the risk profile pushes him at least to the back of the second round for me, or sorry, back of the first round to me, if not into the second round.
Okay. I love Mookie Betts.
I do
I'm
too. Again,
fully in the tank for
this is
him.
not like anti-Dodgerism or anything like that. If anything, like I think the fact that he's on the Dodgers is like a reason why like you should probably try to draft Mookie Betts. But,
Yeah, because he still scored 75 runs in
yeah,
116 games, 19 and 16 on the homers and steals, 75 ribbies as well. So even there, 289 average. He is 32. That's fair, coming off an injury and a few other injury related things in recent years. He played a buck 52 in 2023, but then 142 and 122 the 2 years before that for Mookie Betts. So, things are starting to pile up a little
I,
bit. So maybe he is just a back end first round. I know you said maybe not even the first round for you. He's still there for me. Even with some concerns, I can't quite get him out of the top 15. Just too strong because at the very least, I'm getting that shortstop outfield. And we always talk about how much we
yeah,
love
we
the
love that.
infield outfield
I think it
capability of somebody.
really, I think it really just depends on what you think of the back end of the first round, right?
Right.
Like there are certain guys back there that I just love, right? I love Vlad Guerrero Jr., Paul Skeens and Tariq Skubal. They're probably going to push up into the,
Mm-hmm.
closer into the middle or the top of the first round. Julio Rodriguez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Francisco Lindor, like those are all guys I think I would probably take over Betts this year. With Julio being the one that I'm more tentative on. So
Okay.
to me, like I think he's probably going to end up closer to like 17, 18 for me, which means I'm probably not getting Mookie Betts this year in any leagues.
I wouldn't say any. I would think that it would be tougher for you to get him, but I still think there'll be some because what's his max? His max got to be somewhere around that. Yeah, it's
It's
19.
19. Yeah.
So there'll be some drafts where he drops, and then we always talk about how in the spring the pitchers start to push up more when people can be more confident about how they feel about pitchers. At least in the NFBC, that's where we definitely see it. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where Mookie lingers. Does he get pushed down when pitchers go up? Does he stay there? Do we get another position change before the season even starts? Who knows? But he is the number one guy where he is to be eligible, at least at second base for me. Let's go to the second tier because this is four veteran guys who have all shown crazy upside, the ability to be top player, top fantasy player, top second baseman in fantasy type vibes. But they're getting a bit older as a group. Jose Altuve, Ketel Marte, Ozzy Albies, Marcus Semien, they've had different issues crop up. Altuve really just getting older. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even really say there's much beyond that. Just if you're starting to get worried about what a 34-year-old, 35-year-old at second base, okay, maybe. But then Marte's had injuries before throughout his career, so Albies is starting to pile up the injuries, and Semien is coming off of a tougher year. But let's take them in order and start with Altuve. Ho hum, just cashing in another 2020 season with a 295 average, 94 runs, and 65 ribbies. Good, not great. Where do we go from here, though? Because it is a pretty big dip from where he was, at least in terms of the OPS. And most leagues don't count OPS, but it matters in terms of like where he's at, and it will impact certain things because it was really a power outage. 522 to 439 on the slug for Altuve was the drop off. So he hit 17 homers in 90 games in 2023 and then only added 3 homers despite adding 63 games. So do you think that that's a blip or maybe some of the new reality of power for Altuve as we go into age 35 season?
I think it's reality of the deader ball last year, right?
Oh,
Like
that's a good
this,
point too.
like I think he's just one of the guys that he got caught some homers because the ball was better. So is that the reality in 2025? I don't know. What kind of ball are they using? Anybody know yet? So like,
Wish.
yeah. What I think is interesting is, we were just talking about Love and Mookie Betts for the infield outfield eligibility. There was a report yesterday that Alex Bregman and the Astros have started negotiations again,
Mm-hmm.
and that if they were to re-sign him, Altuve would move to left field
Oh,
because they can't move
because then
Paredes
they
out
would
there.
put,
They
right.
put Paredes probably at second or
Yeah.
Bregman at second, and then Altuve at the left field. Now you're saying like 2 of the shallower positions in fantasy, you're going to have eligibility. I love Jose Altuve. I know he's 35, but like he's 35. He doesn't really miss that many games. Like I think I would love Jose
No,
Altuve to move out to
23
the
was his
outfield.
first big injury. Other
Yeah.
than that, it's littered with 150s and 140s. I guess you do have a 124 in 2019. I did miss that. But he was so good in the
Yeah.
124 because it was the juice ball that he still hit 31 bombs. But yeah, I love what Altuve brings to the table. And even at 35, I'm not really balking on him. And if this left field thing came to fruition, that would be big. Even though the second base eligibility I think is better, anytime you get extra flexibility, it just is valuable. He goes around pick 63. He's actually third amongst this little group that we have here. So we'll go from Altuve to Ketel Marte, who he's a player that I've liked, but I have not translated that like into much drafting of him. I've
Mm-hmm.
been tentative because of the injuries. Now we do have 3 straight seasons of at least 550 plate appearances. That's a pretty decent bar to reach. 558, 650 for the big 2023 season, and then 583 last year. And he did so much work in those 583 that it was basically like a full season anyway. The power's on the incline for Ketel Marte. Remember, he had a breakout with power in 2019 and then kind of came back to earth in 20 and 21. So people were like, was that, and 22, excuse me. So was that even real or was it just the juice ball? And then the last 2 years, he's been a power threat again. What do you make of a 31-year-old Marte who really only has the 2 fully healthy seasons? If we're going to use a cutoff of like 150 games as fully healthy, then it's only 2 seasons there. If you want to use 600 plus plate appearances, it's also only 2 seasons, albeit 2 different seasons, believe it or not, because in 2019, he only played 144 games, but had 628 plate appearances. And in 2018, he played 153 games, but had 580 plate appearances. So that's kind of an interesting quirk there for Marte. All that build up to say, where do we go from here? 2 great seasons in a row. And now all of a sudden he's a firm second rounder, actually second, third rounder, pick 29. Sorry. So he's more of a turn guy there. Is that too rich for you? Are you in on Marte? Is he somebody you go for?
I think for me, it's a little hard to go for Marte when these other guys in this tier are there. I've always loved Ketel Marte, and I've always rooted for Ketel Marte, but I've not really been drafting in the last years because of the injuries. Like this is a guy who is seemingly always banged up, dealt with recurring back issues for a while. Last year, it seemed to like kind of all really come together. Actually, the last 2 years, it's kind of seemed to all really come together. So I feel like at this point, the injury worry is less on my mind. I just really love the other, well, 2 of the other guys in this tier. I don't know how yet I feel about Ozzy Albies,
Albies
but
and Altuve. Oh, I thought Albies was going to be one of them because we've been such
no,
fans of his, although the injuries are starting to
the
pile up. So
injuries
let's,
worry me. So like I can't rationalize taking Ozzy Albies over Ketel Marte. Like I
we
could
don't
not.
have to because Albies is
Yes,
pick 60. They're 2 rounds apart.
but
And
I'd still
so,
rather take. I'm probably not going to take Marte where he's going. Like
mhm.
I just feel like you're passing up on so much there there, especially like in the pitching department.
I
Like
agree.
Logan Gilbert goes right there, Garrett Crochet goes right there. If you want a closer, Emmanuel Clase. And then you've got like some premier third basemen in Austin Riley and Rafael Devers, not to mention an outfielder I think we both love in Jackson Merrill. So like
Absolutely.
I just think there's so many guys there that I really, really like that I honestly feel like their floors are a little bit safer considering the past injury history. But I'm not like opposed to taking Marte there. Like I think there will be builds where I build around Marte.
Yeah, I just, like I said, push come to shove, I just haven't been consistently drafting him, more or less since the 18-19 pair of
Yeah.
seasons there. So, I love what he gave in 19. That was an amazing year, and now he's had two great seasons in a row. Just gives me a little bit of concern that with the injuries piling up and now into his 30s, I don't know if I want to pay that premium. I am still in on Albies, and we're gonna get to him next. Like I said, he is two full rounds after Ketel Marte at pick 60-ish. But the injuries are starting to pile up for him too, and they've been rough. And we've seen some underperformance. Like there have been things here that you have to take stock of. And I love Albies, but I do think we need to step back. And maybe as I'm looking at the numbers now, maybe I'm going to be a little bit more tepid than I thought, because we do have two of the last 3 years below average bat by OPS plus 95, 126, and 93. And both of the 90s came in very few games, 99 and 64 respectively. But that's part of it. That's part of the problem now. If you love him, I think you look at the 33-13 from 2023 and say, if I get a healthy Albies, I'm getting a good Albies. But if you don't like him, you say two of the last 3 years have been devastatingly injured and had poor performance, and I don't know if I can trust him at pick 60. I think now that I look at the numbers, I'm leaning a little bit closer there, despite, like I said, being a big Albies guy, generally speaking.
For me, it's just about the injury. Like I think that the poor performance is injury based, right?
Yeah.
Like, dude, like and all of his injuries last year weren't like really that like they're not things I'm worried about reoccurring, right? He got hit in the arm and broke his wrist or something like that at one point. Like
Move your arm next time, right?
yeah, like like I don't know that that's repeatable. That being said, like the culmination of all these injuries definitely has me a little bit more scared. And while I don't think the price is bad, I think the price is actually really good. I'm still going to take Simeon. Like I'm just if I'm choosing between the two, like give me the guy who is just an absolute horse in terms of plate appearances.
My buddy Greg cringing right now. He's off the Simeon train big time. He's not
Why?
gonna like hearing us talk Simeon. I think he's just old and boring, and I think he worries that
But and so if you're playing in like a 12-team league, I totally get that. You're playing in a 10-team league, totally get that. Like
right, because you're saying the volume isn't as valuable when you can freely replace guys,
because
or
you can
more
find that
easily
volume
replace
on the
guys.
wire.
Yeah.
But like for me, Marcus Simeon is like probably the only player in baseball to put together 6 consecutive seasons, not including 2020, of 700 plus plate appearances. Like that's insane. Like he has, over the course of the last 4 years, Marcus Simeon has missed a total of 4 games.
That's crazy, and I value that so much.
Like,
and I
like when
to that
you are
end,
drafting early, like you want a guy you can set and forget. And
right.
like that's Marcus Simeon. Like I know things were down for him last year, but I also think like I think he was definitely hurt by the less juiced ball or the deader ball. But I also think it was just like kind of a World Series hangover for the entire Texas team. Like, and I think that a lot of those guys are just going to naturally bounce back after kind of everybody kind of just sucking last year.
That was such classic World Series hangover, right? It just doesn't seem like anything but that. Now, I do understand if you're looking at a 34-year-old and you're saying, okay, you had a big down season, and here's where the fantasy and the real life separate a little bit too. Because if you cycle back to 2022, you do see a 106 OPS plus for Simeon with a 248 average. But then the fantasy folks says 26 homers, 25 steals, 101 runs, and 83 ribbies. I wasn't worried about the 106 OPS plus. So maybe that's where part of his issues with Simeon lie as well. But I'm with you. Like you said, the deeper leagues, which is generally what we focus on, especially in the winter when we're playing 15-team draft champions leagues, I'm still going to go for the stalwart Simeon and bank 700 plate appearances. As much as you can bank anything, right? We always know that anything can happen, especially as you get into your mid-30s. but he still feels very bankable to me. And I don't believe that last year was like the beginning of the end in terms of his bat coming down.
No, because like everything was still kind of in line under the hood, right? Like
Right.
he 90% zone contact. That's what he had in 2023. I mean, it was like literally 0.7 percentage points lower. So nothing, right? Like he still swings outside the zone a quarter of the time. His swing strike rate was 9.5%. His max exit velocity was 112, which was actually the best of his career. Like his XBA was 251. Like he deserved a little bit better. Now, like, is he going to rebound completely back to like the 2023 levels or ever get back to
Maybe
the
not.
2021 levels? Like, no, but like 25
2021,
home
definitely
runs.
not. I'm not putting 45 homers down in any way, shape, or form. I'm
Yeah,
with you
no,
there.
of course not. But like 25, 10
Yeah,
with, a bunch of runs because I think that Texas team will be better.
agreed.
A good amount of RBIs, maybe back to like 85, 90 RBIs and like a 250 batting average. Yeah, like I think that's what Marcus Semien is. And it's bankable. It is just you like even in a down year, he was still good. Like he wasn't
Yep.
great, but he was still good. Like he's a guy you don't have to worry about like replacing at any point. Like I said, missed 4 games in total over the last 4 seasons.
And he feels priced to buy. Semien
Yeah.
goes around pick 100. And yeah, there's some like flashy, sexy second baseman going there, guys that we're going to talk about. Let me see if it's on this episode.
He
Well,
will
one we're
not
going to talk
be
about
there
this
at it. He
episode.
will not be there at pick 100 in any draft I'm in. If,
Same. But
I try to diversify and stuff like that, but like if I'm sitting there at pick 90, like and Marcus Semien is still on board, you can just pencil him into my team.
I totally agree. Westberg and McLean are the two I'm talking about. We're going to talk about Westberg in the next tier and then McLean on Monday. And like, sure, I get the intrigue of both those guys. I was a huge McLean guy last year. I'm going to double down this year and stay bought in. But like, give me Semien here. And then our boy Brett Hale has a great point here too. Why pay for Altuve at pick 64 when you can get Semien at 100?
Yeah.
And I tend to
Listen,
agree with that. I'm fully in the bag for Semien
I'm
is the bottom
probably
line.
going to pass on all these other guys that we've talked about so far and just grab Marcus Semien at like pick 80, pick 85, something like that is
Yep.
probably what I'm going to do.
I got no problems with that. Like I said, I'm sticking with him at least another year here. And then if we see another big decline season or another mediocre type output, then I wouldn't be like, okay, we have to start moving on it from a mid-30s guy. But he's earned enough credibility with me. All right, so let's move on to tier 3. And it is Jordan Westberg, Bryce Terang, Spencer Steer, Jonathan India, and Xander Bogaerts. Very interesting group here. Are you following the tiers that we have on the page? Is that where you broke these up by? Or are these broken up by ADP?
I went by the tiers on Joe's post.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're just following the tiers of the position ranks that we have. So this is an intriguing group, and I do like that Westberg is right here because, like I said, his price point is basically the same as Semien's. So you got the young, flashy new guy and a boring, crusty old guy, like the perfect fantasy conundrum, right? The new flavor of the month versus snoozy old, boring, dependable. I know you're going Semien, but let me make you devil's advocate. Make the case for Westberg here. First off, let me start. Do you like him generally?
No,
Okay, even better. No, I want you to make a case for somebody you don't like to kind of put yourself in a position of like, let me see the bright side here. So you don't like him coming in, but now I'm forcing you to make a case for Westbrook. Somebody took Semien right before your pick. You wanted to go second base here, and he's the guy.
I mean,
psych yourself into it.
Okay, so I will play devil's advocate because I would not be going Westberg. I would not be
Right.
pivoting Westberg. But he's an accumulator. Like he's another one of these deep league guys that like, hey, he does enough of everything. Now the question becomes, is he going to accumulate? Because he only played 107 games last year. But add in the fact that the Orioles are moving in that fence in left field, and hey, maybe we could get some more power from Westberg this year. Plus, again, I think the Orioles are going to be a better team. I think they're just, they're getting a little bit older, a little bit more mature. Some of these guys are coming in their own. So I think the runs and RBIs won't be a problem. I think the big issue for me is like, I just don't see where the massive carrying tool for a guy like Westberg is. But I can make the argument that, hey, I love accumulators because they're so reliable and you get a little bit of everything to make it easy to build your the rest of your team because you have more options down the road of your draft.
Right.
So I can understand why people like Westberg. I think there is a belief that Westberg is going to take a massive step forward at some point. I don't know that I'm buying that.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. And by the way, this is just purely coincidental. But in the draft in Arizona, Greg took Jordan Westberg. And it's like, because I'm looking at the ADP and it lists like who took him
I mean,
in the
how
draft
does
that you
he
were
hate
in.
Marcus Simeon but like Jordan Westberg?
He took
Like
Westberg at pick 114. I tell you, my big concern with him really comes down to something that isn't directly fantasy related, but leads to production, which is the plate skills. They're kind of modest. 22% K rate on its face doesn't necessarily bother me that much, but with a 5% walk rate, which is pretty underwhelming, I think that sort of plate profile leaves him open to some troubles. And we did see some ebbs and flows from Westberg last year. I do wonder if his proponents are, like you said, banking on a spike, and it would have to relate to the power, not just from the fence moving in, but just from growth of a 26-year-old. Because yeah, otherwise, where's it coming from? He's not a burner, so I'd be surprised if we saw Westberg steal 15, 20 even, let alone something more. So it has to be that you think he can be into like the mid upper 20s with power, and he is dual eligible too. So second and third, that gives you the middle and the corner too. We do like that. So there's some reasons to be interested, but like I said, if you got Simeon going at the same price point, I'm just not going to take Westberg at that point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I really can't do that.
All right, Bryce Terang was one that I took a fat L on last year.
My
I
boy.
wasn't there at all. In fact, I think I even remember, if I can just totally roast myself, seeing him on the roster resource page at one point starting, and at second, with Adames at short, and I was like, I don't think so, man. I don't know about that. What about this Tyler Black guy? Yeah, cool brain, Paul. But anyway, I was wrong. And not only that, even if he had guaranteed me that he was starting, which obviously once he won the job, we knew he was starting, I still wouldn't have been that interested because I didn't think he was much of a hitter. And to that end, he really wasn't. 254, 316, 349 is not knocking your socks off, but 50 steals at the
Yeah.
price point that he was at last year, that is hard to be upset about. And because he's a wonderful defender, Bryce Terang does lock in that playing time. Adames is gone now. I think Ortiz is going to get shortstop, but either way, he and Terang are going to be up the middle some way, somehow. What can Terang do for an encore here after the big breakout campaign last year? Is there more to the bat, or is this just a speed accumulator that you have to pay a little bit of a premium for? I don't think 137 is an egregious price point, even as somebody who doesn't like him, but I'm reluctant on speed only guys.
So I think there's more everywhere except for the power. Like I don't think that Terang is ever going to be a like teens homer guy. Like I mean,
Sure.
he may hit double digits, a few times, but ultimately I think he is a guy that is going to steal a lot of bases, score a lot of runs for this Milwaukee team. I do think there's some upside in the batting average. He makes a ton of in zone contact, and so he puts the ball in play a lot. He does not strike out very much. And I think there are going to be years in which, we kind of saw it in the, kind of in the first and second half splits with Terang. Because if you look at like what he did in the first half, he was hitting 277. You're like, oh, nice. And then he hit 220 in the second half. Now, part of that was like just a 265 BABIP. I don't expect him to carry a 265 BABIP. But part of it is too, like he does not strike the ball particularly hard, right? So like sometimes when you're not striking the ball particularly hard, you're going to get a lot of kind of slow ground outs that he can sometimes beat out, sometimes he doesn't beat out. Or you're going to get a lot of like line drives to the shortstop, or line drives to the second baseman. So I think there is a little bit of variable risk in terms of where Terang's batting average is going to come in. But I would expect him to be like a 265 hitter with, the potential of like, hey, there's going to be a year where he pops like a 290 and then steal just a crap ton of bases. And
So
so
some
really,
Nico Horner vibes.
yeah, I think he is.
Suggesting
I think
here.
he's exactly Nico Horner.
Okay.
I think that's exactly who he is. And with Nico Horner hurt and,
Yeah.
or at least not, we don't know where he's going to become opening day. I would much rather take a shot on Terang. Like I don't have a problem with the price at all. And he's a very good defender, which Milwaukee really, really prioritizes in that
Big
infield.
time.
So I think that Terang is one of those guys that like he's going to play every day. His defense will keep him in, and the fact he makes a lot of contact will keep him in.
Yeah, I think the playing time is locked, which is valuable. So I will say that um, that does help because sometimes you get those speedsters, and the first one that leaps to mind, it's not a perfect comp because this guy was an outfielder, but the first one that leaps to mind is like Malik Smith. And when you get some of these guys that like they don't have the wonderful defense to kind of lock in their playing time. I think he was an okay defender, not quite a butcher, but like Turang is legitimately a badass defender. He won the Platinum Glove, and so that's like the best Gold Glover basically. So that's going to make sure that he gets 600 plate appearances if he's healthy. So you're going to get the volume of steals, and I do think that that builds a decent floor because even if he's hitting 228, I think he's still playing. He's still running. So you're going to get something there from Terang, but you do have to supplement the power. So if you go in with an approach of drafting him, and I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but when I go for these one cat guys, these rabbits, I want to go in knowing I'm going to do it. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can pivot. Maybe you draft 3 power only guys in the first 4 or 5 rounds, and you're like you can pivot to him there. I can do it on the fly. I'm not so immovable that I can't. But generally, if I'm going to do that, I like to map out the whole plan. I'm going to take these 2 rabbits, and I'm going to get the power supplemented here, there, and there, and try to go that way. But yeah, Terang I do think is at least bankable for volume when he's healthy because his defense rules. What about Spencer Steer? Somebody that this show has been very big fan of in his first 2 years here. First base outfield, interesting combo. But obviously in the shorter qualification leagues, you will get second base eligibility. Now it will take 5 games because he only played 7 games there. So this is very niche eligibility for Spencer Steer. Maybe we'll deep dive him a bit more in outfield. I can't remember. Did we talk about him at first base? We had to have because he
I think
qualifies
so. Yeah.
fully there. So if you want to get more on Steer, go back to first base. But just a passing thought, does he elevate from the 119 price point in Yahoo leagues, for example, where he would be second base eligible? Does that move the needle for you if he's first, second, and outfield for Steer?
I think so. Like I just think he's one of those guys that, especially in those Yahoo leagues where you don't have a lot of bench spots, like
Mm-hmm.
he just is so valuable because you can just move him around, especially daily moves lineups, right? Which a lot of people on Yahoo play, where you can like set that lineup every day. Hey, this player's out or this team is off. Oh, I can move Steer here to cover this position. So like I think that intrinsic value, which doesn't really show up in the stats, makes a lot of sense for those leagues where he has all those eligibilities.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Those daily leagues, when especially on Mondays and Thursdays, which are the bigger off days, and you can get somebody in like
And
that is
even in
really
like
huge.
NFBC where you've got that Friday switch,
Yep.
like being able to move him around when like all of a sudden like a random first baseman gets hurt and you're like, or if someone has the weird 2-day weekend, right, where
Yes,
they're
we
off
saw a
on
lot of that
Friday.
last year.
Yeah, like I don't know how much the schedule bears out like that this year. I haven't looked at the schedule super closely, but like there's rain in like Tampa, right? Tampa's playing outside this year. It rains in Florida all the
Hmm.
time. Like, hey, it looks like this series might get completely rained out. Like, okay, well, he can go cover for Yandy Diaz for me, right? Or he
And
can
these
cover this.
sound like niche situations, but those plate appearances add
They
up.
they
You
they
know,
they do. They add up a ton, right? Like
our
you
colleague Jeff Zimmerman and one of our friends Rob DiPietro, they are like the playing time kings.
yeah.
They will spam that volume. They don't want just a bunch of bad players in, but volume, 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 and getting those little
It's
roster
why
moves
Steve
in.
Weimer is so
Yes, he's
good
another
at
great
it.
one.
like like all those guys are really really good at like the draft champions, right? Because they just destroy the volume, right? Like they're getting all these at bats, all these innings, and like because those things matter, right? Like
Yep.
they
You
really
never
do.
know when those supplemental runs and ribbies and extra steel is going to help.
Well,
It all
because
matters.
you're also like in some ways like almost doubling up when you've got a guy like Steer, because when you can cover like let's say, hey, there is a rain out, right, and you can use Steer to cover, you're going to still get those plate appearances from that
That's
game that
right.
just got rained out. So like otherwise you're just giving away free plate appearances.
Yeah, so we love positional flexibility, guys, especially when they have something like infield, outfield, or even corner and middle on the infield. It just adds an extra dynamic there. This next guy is to be only. not to be. Sorry, that's stupid. But Jonathan India, excuse me, former teammate of Steer, and we did talk about him after the trade, but let's dive in a little bit more. He's been a guy that I'm pretty sure you've liked over the years, and he's turned into a little bit of a steady Eddie, maybe boring, kind of a league average type hitter when you look at his rates the last 2 years with like a nice teens homer SB. So not quite that 2020, but it's been 17 and 15 homers with 14 and 13 steals. He goes to KC now, which, as we've talked about, made sure that people understand that is not a bad place to hit, especially if you're not a huge power guy, which he isn't. So ripping the gaps and blasting a bunch of doubles, he might have his first 35 plus double season. So what do you like about India over in KC? Do you think he can thrive atop that lineup with Witt, Vinny P, and Sal Perez driving him in?
Man, I've always loved Jonathan India, but I don't love him for this season. Like
Ah,
it is,
bummer.
yeah. Going to Kansas City hurts the power production. So now you're talking about a guy who wasn't particularly powerful to begin with, doesn't run a ton, and he was just on a team that was third in baseball in stolen bases, and now he's moving to the team who's 11th. But like, and that may not seem like, hey, like a huge drop. That's like over 70 steal difference between the two teams. I think he's going to be an average asset. I think he can be a runs asset, but like that's two categories, and there are guys going below him that I kind of like a little bit more. So actually, he's going pretty low.
Runs are always scary to bet on, though, just because
he's going 253.
Yeah, that's a fair price for India. Like I don't hate the price point.
I don't mind that price point at all because he actually like is like a demarcation line of like guys that I'm interested in versus guys I have really no interest in. So because like the next guy coming off the board is Christopher Morel, who I've already said how much I'm not drafting.
And I see the appeal, but he's very scary. That is a
I mean, the
very
price is
boomer-bust
fine
type
on
of guy.
Morel, and we'll talk about him next episode. But like, yeah, actually, I did not realize how low India was going. I wonder.
I kind of didn't either, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, like I actually don't mind. Now, I think you're just gonna have to like have really smart roster construction because I think I have him projected for like 9 or 10 home runs and like 9 or 10 homers. That, or sorry, 9 or 10 home runs or 9 or 10 stolen bases. Like that isn't a lot of juice, and so you're gonna need to make sure. And it's not like you can even pencil him in for a good average. He's been pretty much hitting 248 like his entire career. So maybe that comes up a little bit, in a more spacious ballpark where, instead of getting, a few extra homers, he's going to get some more hits. But he's not a guy I love with. He's more of a fallback option. Like, hey, I need some runs scored here. I need a guy who's going to play. This is a decent spot for him type of thing. Whereas he's not a guy like I've got circled on my draft sheet.
So, that happens sometimes. We have to break up with players we like in fantasy because their situation changes. Yeah, the homers are going to come down. That is the one thing that KC does stifle, by the way. I didn't mean to imply that. But I think because it stifles power, home runs power, people think that it stifles all offense. And we learned last year on air during an episode where we were like, wow, KC actually boosts everything else to the point where it actually is a hitter park. It just stifles homers. So yeah, India is going to be a tough fit, especially with the health of 2 of the last 3 years. Now he did play 151 last year, but 119 and 103 the 2 years before. So where do you come out on his playing time will be a decision too. Thankfully, that is covered in the price point, though. 250 is a really fair price point. Let's talk Xander Bogaerts. 155. I still do the Boston accent whenever I say Xander. Obviously, hasn't been there now for a couple years. But Xander, going into his 3rd year with the Padres of like a 32-year deal, and he already sucks. Awesome. No, he's coming off of a tough year, though. And this is actually one of my favorite players, so I'm not trying to roast him, but God, I hated that deal when they signed it just because of the length, dude. I just don't think he's going to age so well that you feel good about 11 years. But anyway, I think he's better than he was last year. I'm going to give him a little bit of an injury pass. He played 111 games, 11 homers, 13 steals, 264 average. Tough year for Bogaerts. Do you also give him a little bit of a pass for that, or does this raise some concerns for him going forward? He's around pick 150, Xander Bogaerts. What do you think?
I like Bogaerts. I know last year was kind of a disaster year for him, but like he's just a guy who does a little bit of everything, and I feel like I'm not ready to put an injury prone tag on him
Yeah.
necessarily. He played 150 games and 153 games in 22 and 2023 respectively. Last year, like I said, was kind of just a disaster year. But like, if you look at what he did, even in that disaster year, like he still hit 11 home runs, stole 13 bases, and 463 plate appearances, hit 264. Like I think he's probably just going to kind of rebound to the guy he's been, which is a plate appearance hog, and that kind of contributes in every category. I don't think we're ever going to see another 20 home run season again, especially in San Diego. But like, mid to high teens homers, mid to high teens stolen bases with a decent average and accumulating on a good offense. Like, I'm fine with Xander Bogaerts where he's going.
Yeah, I think that is a totally fair price point to bet on a bounce back, which I do think is in the cards. He was a homer and a steal shy of 2020 last year, excuse me, 2023. And he kept it up with 13 steals in 111 games. He runs in San Diego. It took several years off where he was a single digit guy, like a 5 to 8 type of guy, after 3 double digit seasons from 15 to 17. And I wouldn't have blamed anybody for thinking, hey, Xander as a base stealing threat is gone, but double digits each of the last 2 years, 19 and 13, and the 13 coming in a lower sample. That makes me confident to put him down for at least 14, 15. And I actually think he could pop 20 homers again, too. I wouldn't project him for that. I would keep him in the upper teens. But if he went 20 and 14 with a 280, it wouldn't surprise me in the least for Xander. And of course, I like San Diego. He gets second and short, too. And that's full qualification. So even if you play 20 game eligibility, he gets both of those, which is nice as well.
I added Luis Garcia Jr. to the rundown.
Perfect.
I think it looks like that Joe left him off of his tier sheet, but it's on his full sheet. And I was like, hey,
Okay.
we're missing somebody.
Let's talk about him because it's another guy that you've been a big fan
Yeah.
of, and he broke out last year. Now we
And,
did
and
have
I
the unfortunate
stopped,
situation.
I
where you
stopped
didn't get
being
him.
on the freaking bandwagon for the first time, and then
In
he
4
fucking
years. You
freaks
stuck with
out
him for, well, actually
for
3 seasons because
everything.
2020, who cares? But 21, 22, 23, you came into the year. Luis Garcia is my guy. He could break through. He could break through. He could break through. The funny thing was, like, I get why you were a little bit like, maybe this isn't going to happen. But at the same time, he was only 24.
Well, no,
So
and
he
I
was still
still
so
believed in his
young.
talent. It had
Right. You
nothing
just
to do
weren't
with his.
drafting him as much.
It was because the Nationals came out in spring saying we don't know where he fits into this
Yep.
team. Like I'm like they're gonna send his ass back down. Like, and I wish I just like throw him on the end of the bench and see what happens. And I didn't, and that was a bummer.
18-22 on the homers and steals. Big breakthrough season. We've already talked about how the Nats were running like crazy. They created Jesse Winker's stolen base threat, which was hilarious. But Garcia is more of somebody who we at least thought could be like a low double digits guy. But he spiked to 22 because of the team. The team was running so much. But more importantly was the doubling of the home runs from 9 to 18 with a 282 average. It was a full scale breakout. I know I shouldn't just ask you what does he do from here because you're going to say more of the same. You like him. But I assume you believe in this for the 25-year-old. Are you going to pay the accelerated price point? Because now he actually costs a little something, and that's pick 120. Is that too rich for your blood, or is that somewhere where you can still get Luis Garcia Jr.? And he does go wide the junior there, so we're going to make sure to be clear with that.
He's definitely someone I'm open to taking. I don't think he's a target for me at the kind of increased price because like if we think Xander Bogaerts is going to be healthy and no reason to think he won't be unless we hear something in spring, like wouldn't you rather just wait on Xander Bogaerts, 30 picks later, like wait 2 rounds and take someone else? So that for me is kind of the issue in terms of Luis Garcia Jr. It's not that I think he's going to take a step back. I do think there's a chance he could take a step back in the power. I think he was pretty lucky in terms of the home runs. You look at like his X home runs versus actual home runs, and he had 13 X home runs. So you're kind of like
6 extras is a lot.
Yeah. So like that to me is a little bit scary. But that being said, like I still think he could be a really valuable community. He's kind of like a diet Marcus Semien. A guy who's going to play every day. I think this team is going to be offensively better in 2025. And like he's kind of set it and forget it kind of do. I just don't know that the power is going to be quite there. And I don't know that I want to pay for this kind of increased price.
Yeah, I can't really dispute any of that with Luis Garcia Jr. Because the price has elevated so much, and there's so many guys I like behind him. Chief among them being Bogarts, like you highlighted, and then some of the guys that we're going to talk about on Monday that I'm not quite there. But I have made clear that I am very much in on Washington as a dark horse, and I think they could even become a bit of a wide awake sleeper team to the point where too many people are hyping them. But that won't dissuade me from wanting to get some of their fantasy players, though, like Abrams, James Wood, Dylan Cruz, even Garcia Jr. in the right setup. But I'm not currently targeting him because I'm probably either going to already have Semien or wait for Bogarts. Now, at least with Bogarts, I would get different position eligibility, so it's not like I couldn't necessarily get them. But if I've already got Semien, I'm not taking another second base only guy that quickly in Garcia. So I am really eager to see what he does for an encore. And like I just said earlier, don't forget, this guy's 25 still. Like he's still in the growth phase technically too. Doesn't mean I'm projecting him for a ton of growth, but like it's at least on the table. And this guy was a highly touted prospect. I think we got into the kind of the fatigue zone with him because he had three relatively modest years, 21 to 23, which were his ages 21 to 23. I like how things sync up perfectly there. But he was a 93 OPS plus in 1,106 plate appearances with an average of 7 homers and 4 steals across those seasons. So it was like, what are we getting here? And then boom comes the breakout in 24. But yeah, I think the market's gone a little bit too hot on him. I think I'd even like an Andres Jimenez who goes 60, 65 picks later. That just seems like too much of a.
We'll talk about him.
Yeah, we'll get into him.
I'm a little down on Jimenez too, but I'm looking at like maybe like a 14-20 kind of season.
Okay. What do you got the average?
Good average,
because that's going to be the key. Okay, you still got good average for.
I think 275, something like that. That's
a really good season. Like that's one of those type of seasons that none of those numbers you said are like eye popping, but as a composite over 600 plate appearances is really, really valuable at second base.
Like I said, it's an accumulator. Again, another one of these guys that like is probably better for your deeper leagues, right? With your in your 10s and 12s, you may want to pivot to a guy with a little bit more upside. But I think this is a really stable guy you can just kind of plug and play.
Yep, I think all that's totally fair with Luis Garcia Jr. And that's going to wrap up the first part of our second base preview here. Excuse me. We got some really interesting guys, but I really think the middle tiers that we're going to start in on Monday are going to create a lot of interesting talking points. You already said that you're a little bit down on Jimenez. There's some sneaky guys in here that could break out, and I think people are going to start to push up too. I can't wait till we talk about Jackson Holliday. Where are people on him? Brandon Lau going around pick 250, and of course your boy Colt Keith, who is actually both of our boys, but you love him in fantasy, and of course he's a Tiger, so I like him as well. So we got lots more to talk about at the Keystone, but there you go with the top tiers. Justin, again, I know you're very excited for this weekend. Best of luck to your Commanders. It should be a hell of a game. Game 3s in the division, like the divisional opponents playing for a third time. That is really, really fun. Did you guys split this year? Or did
we split? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So rubber match being the playoffs, it's going to be electric. I hope it's a great game. I know I joked with you guys that because I used to like the Eagles as kind of like my second favorite team that I was going to go for them. I've pivoted. I'm going for the underdog, and that way I'll do the old. I definitely subscribe to the like if you lose to the champion, you're like you feel better about it. So it's like commies all the way, dude. That way I can say, hey.
I think the important part is we all need to root for the Bills. Like that's
right. Right. Yeah. Like, because the dynasties need to come down. Like, I don't hate KC.
No one's ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. So, like, I don't want to see it happen.
Right. I'm totally fine with everyone kind of uniting against them. It has the 90s, 2000s Yankees feel. And I loved being on the side of hating the Yankees. And it was all sports hate. It was nothing personal or whatever. I got nothing against Mahomes, Kelsey, whatever. But I do want them to lose. And it'd be fun to see the Bills go there. And Bills Commanders, that'd be a crazy Super Bowl.
Repeat of 91.
That would be absolutely bananas. So we'll see how it goes. Best of luck to you and Jason. You guys have a great show on Sunday as well. And we'll talk Monday morning. Peace.
Take it easy.